is Tony Hendrick with Painting Spirit, and today's subject is going to be the couch stretch. I'm picking this subject because it's something that I think all of us have experienced, and it's something that is a good way of describing what it is that I've been in various different ways exploring as I started these painting sessions, and that's the couch stretch. We've all been there where we've been reading a really good book or watching a show, and our mind's caught up in either that book or that show, and we set the book down and the movie's over, and you go into this nice body stretch. It just feels full, and it's just happening, and it feels really good. All the cells in your body are kind of expanding and moving into that stretch on their own. You're not even thinking about it. And then maybe when you do, you go, oh, oops, because your mind just went somewhere else instead of where you were, which is just relaxed and letting that stretch happen. And I became aware of this I've talked about practicing Tai Chi, and that's one of the things that for me really shifted everything with my Tai Chi when I discovered this feeling of the couch stretch while I was practicing my Tai Chi. And it's basically just getting to a place where you're in that zone, and you're simply paying attention to what feels good in the body. And you're going right to the edge of that stretch. Taking it right to the edge, what feels good. And I've talked about balance with these painting sessions, and balance being about getting to that, finding that place where the energy is. Well, it's kind of the same thing that I'm talking about today, except I'm going to look at it from a little bit of a different perspective than just balance. And it's kind of getting out of that tendency to be in the mind, which I talk about also quite a bit. And, you know, I do talk about that being out of the mind, and there's kind of an element of saying, well, using your mind is not a good thing. Well, I'm not really saying that, because there's all kinds of ways to approach painting and art, creating, and for many, 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 many creative artists, the mind is a huge part of it. We just watched this weekend David Byrne's Utopia, American Utopia, I think is what it's called. Great. It's kind of like a concert movie, kind of a Broadway show type thing, not just a concert, but just actual performance, choreography, and that sort of thing going on. And during this, the reason I'm bringing up David Byrne is because he's from the Talking Heads, if you don't know. It goes back to my high school days, listening to the Talking Heads. And I would say, I don't know, obviously, I don't know personally David Byrne. Listening to his music, I think he's somebody a little bit different than me, and he does really give a lot of thought, contemplative thought to creating his art. And during this concert movie performance, he talked about a song of his that a choir group in Detroit, had covered one of his songs, and he was saying that it's a song about being home and having people over and wanting those people to leave is the way he was approaching the song. And when he heard this choir group do their version of the song, the melody was the same, the lyrics were the same, and it was all the same, except what he heard them talking about was more of a welcoming people into the home, their home, his home. And he said, I really like that version better, but I am who I am, and so I'm going to sing the version the way that I sing it, which is more about wanting these people to leave. Anyway, so what was interesting to me about that is you can use your mind to create art, obviously. But it's really about getting to that edge. And it's the edge where the mind meets. Maybe I would call it the heart, or I'm not sure how I would describe it necessarily, but it's basically getting to that place of the couch stretch where you're just caught up in the feeling. Your mind guided you to where you are. Maybe you were watching a movie. You're using your mind, or your mind is occupied by that. And there's this nice little space that happens between the two. And I think, for me, great art actually is all about getting to that place, that in-between place. And the reason I think it's so wonderful is because when you're in that place, you're basically between two worlds. And you're essentially letting go of an attachment to either of those worlds, and you're opening it up to the artwork for interpretation. Oh, I want to show you this. I just discovered this week. This is a little spatula. I actually buy my paints in jars instead of tubes. So this is something I came up with to scoop the paint, and you can see that. It's just a little, I think it's silicone, really soft spatula. So I use that and I just happened to go grab it when it was sitting on my table, and it makes a beautiful brush, like a palette knife. It's actually like using a brush because it's soft, you can bend it, and use it like a palette knife. Let's see here. What can I do here? Let's get some thick paint going. So you can use it like a palette knife. Kind of cool, huh? It was a neat discovery for me. I was probably in that space of the couch stretch at the moment. I was not really thinking about it. I just grabbed it out of necessity or wanting to do something with my painting, and it's like, oh wow, that's cool. Anyway, where was I? I was talking about that. Oh, so this David Byrne song and talking about getting right to the edge. And the edge that I'm talking about is that place where whatever perspective you're coming at it from is basically in between all of the perspectives. So it leaves room for variety of interpretations. So in that particular song, these choir students from Detroit were interpreting it emotionally as welcoming people into their home. And you could feel it in the song. Actually, they played it, that version of it in the titles at the end of the song. This is kind of a joyful little painting here. Fun colors. Kind of a different, it's actually a little like the painting that I just worked on this past during the holidays. So that in-between place, you know, everybody comes to artwork with their own perceptions. And if you can get to that relaxed state while creating and find that pleasure in it, you're actually bringing yourself to that point where when others come to your painting, you've left this, you're basically inviting them to bring their own perspective to the painting. It's kind of like if you got two villages. Maybe they're even villages that are enemies, but there's a safe zone where all the flowers and beautiful grasses, where the two villages are separated by, and in that safe zone, people can just be who they are. They're not necessarily caught up in what their particular village looks like when they're in their own village and they're thinking about the other person's village, and maybe they live a different way than the other people in their village, and they have their fears. When you meet in that space in between, you're both kind of sharing the space together. Those fears can go away. Anyway, that was my bell. That was my short little talk about the couch stretch. I'm not sure if that was a clear talk or not, but it's what it is. And I thought it was something that you might want to think about when you're working on your New Year's resolutions. Finding that place that natural place where you're not having to force yourself into your New Year's resolution. You're finding the pleasure in it. Because that's going to serve you the best, more so than just using your willpower. So get out your brushes. Find the joy in the way you like to paint. And we'll see you tomorrow.